Hello and good evening. Welcome to another webinar panel Q&A discussion hosted by me, Russ Bradford, a person with Parkinson's, and I'm half of Parkinson'S Concierge, which I co-founded with my partner, Charlotte. Tonight's episode deals with life after lockdown. This is part 1 of 2. Tonight, we're going to be dealing with your health and well-being. The second part we'll be discussing at the end of tonight's question and answer session. I'm honoured to have some very special guests tonight on our panel this evening who have kindly given up their personal time to join us and answer some questions that have been coming in over the last week. With me tonight, we have Catherine Crawford from Parkinson'S UK. She's the Director of Services. We also have Annette Hand, and I've been introducing you so many times, I'm trying to think of something different. But I do know that Annette has been involved with Parkinson's for over 21 years, and she's still very passionate working with Parkinson's ever since. We're very pleased to have with us tonight Rochelle Flanagan as a dietitian. Oh dear me, you've got so many letters after your name. You must be a postman. She's World Parkinson's Congress 2022 ambassador, and she's also a Parkinson's Avenger, which is a new position following on from the call to action, which was mentioned in the book, Ending Parkinson's Disease. We're also very pleased to welcome Jillian Ward, and Gillian joins us from mindfulmedicine.co.uk, who will be dealing with aspects of meditation and answering any questions along the lines. As always, there is a live chat facility on here, so please feel free to ask any further questions as they arise. We'll endeavour to answer them accordingly. But bear in mind, we are here for an hour. We've already got quite a few questions filled up. So if your question isn't answered personally tonight from the panel, we'll do our utmost to get an answer back to you. So, so without further ado, let's go to the questions, and in no particular order. Let's see. Rochelle?
Yep.
I'm gonna pick on you first. For obvious reasons, we're not going to name the person who's asked the question. So I'd just like to say that this person has cycled about 3 times a week, been for short walks, but the knees are so painful. They're not too bad when they're cycling, waiting for a steroid jab in one of them. Eat well already. They eat a lot of fruit for breakfast, natural yogurt. Lunch is mostly salads, but not always. They're involved in home-cooked dinners with a lot of veg from the garden. Ice cream for a treat sometimes. I like ice cream too. But they're struggling with their overall feeling of well-being. Any advice?
It's kind of a broad sort of question, and I suppose I should sort of start off by saying that, you know, it's in my involvement here tonight as a dietitian, obviously I can't give individual sort of advice, and often it's hard to tell without seeing someone's whole picture. Certainly, you know, elements of that person's diet is good in terms of the fruit and the veg. You know, what I would say is, you know, for anyone with Parkinson's, what I've found is that, you know, people are searching the internet for answers, and it's natural. I have Parkinson's myself. That, you know, it's one of the areas that we can control is the food we put in our bodies. So we kind of look for answers to try and control our disease. So she's doing the basics. And sometimes people don't do the basics, which is actually, having a good, healthy diet and to follow the food-based guidelines, healthy eating guidelines of your country that you're in. So be it I'm in Ireland or in the UK. So it's basically the food pyramid in Ireland would be the food plate in the UK. There's a pyramid in the States. So the premise of those healthy eating guidelines is to try and get in as much of the good nutrients that we need as a baseline. There are probably things that specifically people with Parkinson's might need in addition, but if we say at the baseline, so just listening to her, diet there, she'd no carbohydrates mentioned, she'd very little protein mentioned, she mentioned a bit of yogurt, there wasn't fluids mentioned. So there's a whole, list of things, and actually by following the sort of food-based dietary guidelines of your home country, you can, what I suggest to people is they do a little food diary, and they basically compare it to those guidelines and see where there may be omitting foods. Now, obviously, people might be deliberately omitting foods because, again, of research they've read around Parkinson's, but we can maybe address that later on. But, certainly I would say in terms of, as she mentioned, her knees were sore, often asked about things like supplements like chondroitin, glucosamine for, aching knees and things like that. The evidence is pretty, limited on it. Not going to do any harm if people take it to try it, and some people anecdotally say it helps them. But I say the research is a little bit, low on the ground with regard to it. Things like having omega-3 oils in the diet are good for joints. So that would be your oily fish, so your salmon, your mackerel, those kind of oily fish. And we kind of generally advise people to have those, at least once or twice a week. That would help with the aching joints, I think she mentioned. So I hope that kind of gives some kind of guidance, but say it's a little bit broad.
Thanks, Rochelle. That's a very important subject matter to mention, that we're not here tonight to recommend medication or recommend personalized wellness or nutrition, because there's so many aspects to Parkinson's that without actually knowing that person and the medical history, so on and so forth, as well as the complexities of Parkinson's that it presents us all. Thank you for leading your introduction with that.
No worries.
Now, for those of you who tuned in last week to try and get to see us, we do apologize for a technical difficulty that we had. Last week, this session should have taken place on what would have been World Brain Day, which is run by the Federation of Neurology. That was on the 22nd of July. The other thing I'd like to mention is, and I believe our technical guy is going to put the link on. I know the link is in the YouTube description. It's regarding donating, because at this difficult time for us all, it's very important to remember that a lot of the charities are struggling to continue to offer the levels of support and assistance we've all been accustomed to. For example, the telephone support lines, etc. They're all difficult to maintain with reduced funding. Bear in mind, along with an increased reliance upon them to assist with all our anxiety and worries during this unprecedented situation. The number of cancelled fundraising events, outdoor activities, and the local group meetings have all had a phenomenal impact on funding and sponsorship. I therefore kindly ask you to remember that Parkinson's UK seriously need your help. If you are able to, please donate to the charity. The button is going to be on the screen, I believe. If not, it is certainly contained within the YouTube description for tonight's session. Also get your friends and colleagues, if you can, to do the same. But remember that Parkinson's, for us all, is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. So you'll be helping to spread the word and educating people about this terrible disease. On to my next question, if I may. Gillian? Gillian again joins us from mindfulmedicine.co.uk. The first question for you, Gillian, is, do meditation sessions help sleep problems for people with Parkinson's?
Thank you, Russ. I think everyone that comes to my class is actually, and anyone who does meditation, for some reason, we don't know why, but they always report an increase in energy during the day and a much more deeper, restful sleep at night. So we're hoping for the signs to catch up with why and how. But it certainly makes you much more aware of how you spend your time. You know, we spend our time so often top heavy, overthinking, over worrying. And of course, as soon as we go to bed, it all lands in a pile, you know, and it either keeps us awake and we can't get off to sleep in the first place, or we wake up during the night and suffer from wakefulness. So it's definitely worth a try. Over lockdown, I've been doing lots of meditations online with people, and we've had lots of comments about sleep patterns being significantly improved over lockdown, which is obviously a worrying time, and we haven't always been as active as we'd have liked to have been as well. Our different routines, we've had to wake up to really to a new routine, haven't we, and adapt accordingly. So lots of different feedback, and I would say slightly different situation. A lady who has suffered from cancer, has had a mastectomy, has gone through chemo, is now on a particular medication with a side effect that causes sleeplessness, actually came back to me and said after a particular exercise that I'd put online, she had the best night's sleep she'd ever had. Okay, so these are really basic exercises. It's just being aware of the breath in, the breath out. It's watching waves in and out from the shore and visualizing the waves. It's repeating a word like the word calm, breathing in, and then breathing out and actually repeating the word calm. And these are ways we get people back off to sleep. Also counting as well is a really good one, or counting down. So there's loads of different types and techniques to, you know, suit whoever and however. There's hundreds of types and techniques of meditation.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Very comprehensive answer there. And I hope a lot of people feel better by taking part and at least giving meditation a try. So what has become apparent from a lot of the questions that have been asked of the panelists over the course of the last few webinars is the issue of what we refer to a postcode lottery with regards to the levels of service for people with Parkinson's, depending on where you live. I am very fortunate, along with Charlotte, to be in a very, very good area where the services are second to none. But now this is your chance to address this. Dr. Annette Hand has formed a panel which includes people with Parkinson's to carry out a research study. It's a survey questionnaire aimed at understanding the scope and value of Parkinson's nursing. There's two sets of questions. One is for the people with Parkinson's, and one is for the families, the carers, the pillars of support of the people with Parkinson's. If you live in the UK, please fill these in. We have already got to about 1,000, I believe, Dr. Annette. So
We have, yes. Fantastic amount.
It really is a good way of getting your voice, your concerns heard, because without this information, you know, we'll just continue doing the same thing day in, day out, and saying that we haven't got this service, we haven't got that service. You know, let's address this. The questionnaires have been designed and a lot of input from people with Parkinson's. So please look for the links. I believe the links are also in the YouTube description, along with the link for donating to Parkinson's UK. So take up our kind request to fill in the survey. Right. Question for Annette, please. What do you see as the major thing a person with Parkinson's needs to consider with regards to the future care after lockdown?
Thanks, Russ, and thanks for having me back again. It's great to keep asking me. It's really good to be here. And thanks for the plug with the survey. I think for me, the one thing is we've had so much uncertainty over the last few months. Lockdown came very quickly and people had no choice, no option about what we did. We had to change and adapt very quickly. And the thing is, we know with Parkinson's, that's really difficult. It's been a stressful time for everybody. And I've even felt the stress and anxiety as my family have done and loved ones, and we don't have Parkinson's. And we've got to remember that with Parkinson's, because the changes to the dopamine and the chemicals within the brain, that impacts on how you cope and manage with stress and anxiety. So can only really appreciate what you must be going through as somebody with Parkinson's. So what I would say now is going forward is the fact that things are starting to change again. So it's about you taking control again. It's about thinking about things that matter to you, activities that matter to people with Parkinson's to get you back to what you enjoy in life again. It's trying to make sure we're keeping active, we're meeting loved ones, we're getting out there, and we're doing what you want to do. But that has to be planned, and that has to be kind of considered. Russ, so you can't just jump back into it again. I think there's a lot of anxiety about going out and seeing other people, but it's just taking baby steps, I think, and just taking things easy and a pace you can cope with, a pace you can deal with, but also finding strategies that can help you with that. So whether that's the mindfulness or anything else that can help you to come to terms with what the new normal is. For me in the NHS, I know that this isn't going away anytime soon. I know that in the NHS, we're planning for at least in the next 6-9 months ahead of us about how things will look and how things will be. So I think it's trying to get to what we think is a new norm. So I think for me, it's just about appreciating it's going to be a difficult time, taking your time over it, but planning that with people around you or support around you, and also including strategies that can help you engage in some of those things about getting out and about more, being more active, or the activities that, really that you enjoy and being part of.
Thank you. That's a well thought out answer. So I appreciate that. Thank you. One thing I'd like to remind people is that Parkinson's
Constipation, one of the core issues. So it's making sure that you get enough fiber in the diet. And there's two types of fibers. There's insoluble fiber, which is kind of like the roughage that basically is what we call nature's brew that helps to move the bowel. So that's your whole grain foods. And your whole grain cereals and your whole grain rice and those kind of foods. And then you've got the soluble fiber, and soluble fiber is actually the type of fiber that gives a gel consistency. As dietitians, we're used to talking about stools and things like that. So basically allows so if you imagine the roughage kind of pushes, but you need the softness to kind of help it pass more easily. Your soluble fiber basically comes from things like your pulses and nuts or pulses. But it also comes from your fruit and your vegetables as well. It comes from your porridge oats. And one of the benefits of your soluble fibers, it helps to manage your blood sugar control as well, which is good. So combination of those two fibers is really important in the day. And also in terms of along with the fiber is to make sure you get plenty of fluid. Because you can imagine if you suddenly ramp up your fiber, you don't drink enough fluid to loosen it up, you could worsen the constipation. So again, it's something that if you have a kind of low fiber diet, so if you suffer from constipation, again, I do a little food diary. It's really useful to write down what you eat and then basically have a look at the foods that you're eating. And you can look at the food label, and on a food label, if something is 6 grams per 100 grams of fiber or more, it's high in fiber, okay? That gives you an idea. So you could have a look at the brands you're using. The other thing is to look at the packaging. So if it says whole grain on the labeling, that's what you want to go for, because you want to get the actual whole. So you've got, say if you take bread, you've got your white bread, which has the least whole grains. You've got your brown, which is a little bit more, and your whole meal, and then your whole grain. So it kind of goes in a gradient of what is the better sort of source of whole grain. So that's what you look for in your shopping basket. So if you are, obviously, as we know, if you're constipated, obviously we know it's a prodromal symptom of Parkinson's. So a lot of people who develop Parkinson's may say, well, actually, I've suffered from constipation for years. And also it can get a bit worse because basically in terms of the dopamine affects many parts of our body, including our bowel. It slows down the stool, how quickly it passes through the gut. And one of the problems with constipation in terms of our medication and symptoms is that it can basically interfere with the absorption of your levodopa, for example. And so that might mean that your symptoms will be worse because you're not getting as much of the dopamine into your brain that you need to convert it. So constipation is actually, if you ask me, one of the really key things that, you know, at a baseline should be checked with every patient on a diagnosis, but on a regular basis, to see, you know, what can help them. And, you know, it's a bit controversial in terms of using laxatives, but I actually took part in a study in King's College London with a couple there. Their names have gone out of my head now, but they have done a paper which actually showed that people who took a laxative actually improved their rigidity over a period of time. Now, I'm not advising people go out and take laxatives, but I think it just shows the importance of speaking with your Parkinson's disease specialist nurse, and ideally a dietitian, to go through your bowel habits and your diet. And just following up on Annette's point and your point about the nurse survey, I think it's amazing. I've seen the survey. I wish we had it in Ireland. At the moment in Ireland, we have 3 to 4 Parkinson's disease specialist nurses, I think, in the whole country, versus 240, I think it is, if you're compared to the UK. So we are so far behind. So I'd be delighted to get the results of that survey to show how important the Parkinson's disease specialist nurse is as being the gatekeeper to be able to then refer on to the dietitian, for example. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think it's a really important message to get out there, that patients should also be asking to see a dietitian. Now, there's also another area in terms of a lot of dietitians aren't trained in Parkinson's, and that is an issue that we, for the Parkinson's UK, Parkinson's Association of Ireland, need to do something about. It's a bit like the physios, you know, who aren't trained in it either. So there's a certain education that happens there, but your dietitian will sort of get the basics for you in terms of getting the constipation sorted. And I'm on a campaign to improve that knowledge of our dietitians and people around diet and nutrition for people with Parkinson's. But I hope that kind of answers the question with regard to the, I know it's a long-winded answer to the nuts, but hopefully gives them a wider range of foods that he can work on for his constipation.
Thank you, Rochelle. Very comprehensive answer there, and it's very much appreciated. Like yourself, I have Parkinson's, and one of the whole reasons for these series of seminars, with Catherine being here from Parkinson's UK, is to get our voice heard. And, you know, the nurses study, as you correctly said, it's a fantastic opportunity to see on a map what areas have the better services, and then try and adjust accordingly. As long as you don't get rid of the Newcastle ones, I'm all right. Catherine, could I get you in on that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Russ. That'd be great. Thanks, Rochelle, for that response as well, and your shout out for Parkinson's services. So part of my day job as Director of Services is working with Annette and other colleagues to drive up standards of care in health across the UK. And the nurse survey, I put the link into the chat box for it on the YouTube link. Their survey is a really important part of that, but it's bigger than that. And right here, right now, one of the key things we're doing is monitoring what's happening in Parkinson's services as we come out of lockdown. We really want to hear from you. If your service, if you can't get in touch with your nurse, or the physio's disappeared because they've been redeployed elsewhere, we really want to hear from you. We've got a tracking log, and we're working with colleagues who are working in the NHS and through our campaigning team to really try to influence, to make sure all the Parkinson's services come back to at least where they were before COVID struck. So my colleague, who's our head of policy and campaigns, is meeting with the Department of Health later in the week to discuss that big thing. That's just one aspect. So please get in touch with us. I'll pop my email address into the chat box too. But to add to Rochelle's point, our excellence network that Annette's a colleague in, and Patty, who's been an Alison of previous calls, part of, we're all about driving up standards in professional education. And a key priority for us has been exactly what Michelle's talked about, is giving dietitians opportunities to get involved in to improve their practice. We're not there yet, but it's a big, important lever for us. So Rochelle, we will be in touch definitely to get closer to you. But yeah, that's my plug for now. But we want to hear from people. How are things for you, where you are? And only by hearing from you can we then use your voice to help us do that influencing work that's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That's very much appreciated. Constipation is one of those taboo subjects quite often, and it can be looked at as being an embarrassing subject. You don't want to talk about it, but again, I'd say that there's no shame in telling your Parkinson's nurse or your consultant if you are feeling constipated, because that gives them an opportunity to work with you, see what medication you're on, and try ways of easing that for you.
Yeah,
so I hope,
if I can come in there as well, just to follow up. The other thing is that if people just need to talk about embarrassing, so again, dietitians, we would work with a lot of people with irritable bowel syndrome. And it's a classic thing where people are embarrassed to talk about wind, farting, and it is, and people are in a lot of pain, and people with Parkinson's with the symptoms, and part of that can be because of their constipation, but also actually people with Parkinson's can have two issues that can go on. One is small intestinal bowel overgrowth, where basically there's an overgrowth of, for the want of a better word, less healthy bacteria, and that can basically cause things like bloating and wind and things like that. And also that the SIBO, that overgrowth of microbiome or bacteria, can actually interfere with your medication as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So people should be getting these things checked. And then the other thing is sometimes people can have Helicobacter pylori, which again is another bug that can interfere with medication absorption as well. So that's why the gastro side of things is actually really, really important for people. If they are suffering in any way, it could actually make a huge difference ultimately to their Parkinson's symptoms. And at the end of the day, we all want to feel the best quality of life as we can, so we need to look at every avenue. And I would suggest that you push on that, because I think there's the knowledge in the area is not great amongst our neurologists and movement disorder specialists around that side of things, and that's where I think when you have the experts in, they can sort of help advise on that. I think we should get in gastroenterologists educated more, and gastroenterologists are beginning to come more to the fore. I think that's really important for us with Parkinson's.
Thank you, Rochelle, a fellow person with Parkinson's. Gillian, if I may come back to you, the next question I've got is meditation safe for people with Parkinson's?
Well, Russ, all the reports so far have been extremely positive. I am a member of the British School of Meditation, and every new student has to fill out a form and give us a bit of history. And that just helps the teacher and helps in a lesson moving forward. But, I haven't in my classes ever experienced anything other than a very gentle experience. Meditation nature is very gentle, but it can be extremely powerful as well. Things do come up, and I always check with people, make sure they haven't got any worries or questions as they're leaving a class or in an online environment. It's very important that you keep the dialogue open, because sometimes people haven't sat still and actually let things come and go ever, and things are going to come up emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever's happening. If you even as a carer or partner of someone with Parkinson's, there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's lots of 24/7 worries and actions to continue with throughout. So lots of people carry lots of stuff in their heads and on their shoulders, and of course meditation gives you that chance to just step away and see if you can see what's happening and create some space between all that worry and thought pattern.
Wow. Fantastic answer. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Dr. Annette, if I could ask, could your Parkinson's nurse help you with the best exercise programs for you as an individual. Now, I'm not sure whether the person asking the question means being signposted to the best exercise program, or perhaps even just being signposted to a physiotherapist.
Mhm. Thanks, Ross. No, I think certainly your Parkinson's nurse is your best place to start. And we have lots of information available to people locally about what services are available. So if somebody comes to me and says they want to be more active, obviously I'll get a better history of them and find out what's going on, find out how active they've been, what they've been up to. Even for me, the Parkinson's UK website is a fantastic resource to start off with. And on there, within Exercise Hub, it's got some really good information, even being active at home, Russ. So if people have been socially isolated, there are things they can still do at home to keep them active. There are lovely YouTube videos on there that people can be directed to, so you can do exercises at home. And I know you and Charlotte have also been taking part in lots of fun exercises. I've seen, you post about that. So there's lots of things out there we can direct you to. The other thing is about finding something that you enjoy. I think if you said to me, Annette, you've got to go to the gym 3 times a week, I'd be saying to you, no way, and I would never do it. So it's about trying to find some activities that actually you really enjoy. And the nice thing about Parkinson's UK is they do have a site we can go on to, put your postcode in, and it'll bring up all the activities around your area, no matter where you live. And that's not just Parkinson's related, because that's not all what people want to do necessarily, but it'll show you where everything from Nordic walking to swimming to you name it, it's there for you, whatever's there locally that's been caught up by local intelligence. So hopefully then you'll find something that you really enjoy, and whether it's walking football or something else, it's about trying to keep active. And certainly, I will try and reinforce that with anybody. It's about really important. There's lots of fantastic evidence out there now about how exercise can hopefully improve not only your health, but also your well-being and your mental health, and improve your Parkinson's symptoms. And there is also potential evidence there about looking at neuroprotection and helping to slow things down. And yes, certainly, if you felt that physiotherapy after discussion with you was appropriate or was helpful going to do, certainly referring you through to exercise groups locally for physiotherapy with exercises and support. So certainly your Parkinson's nurse is probably the easiest step to go to first of all if you're stuck. We've got a wealth of knowledge and support. You're right, and we don't give you a prescribed exercise program. We can certainly signpost you in things that you might want to do yourself, or then certainly refer you through, as you say, to our colleagues in physiotherapy or other sports activities that can be more helpful in terms of a personalised program of activity for you.
Fantastic. Thanks for that answer. And talking about exercise, I heard today on the radio that the government is going to encourage people to get bikes. So as a person with Parkinson's, I've already got a bike, but I'm not riding it at the moment. Whether they extend to indoor bikes for the people with anxiety, the indoor fitness type, let's wait and be seen. So there's a question come in regarding meditation. Can that help with somebody who suffers pain?
Thanks, Russ. Well, we have sometimes a little mini topic each session when I teach meditation, and pain often comes up. And what I describe is quite often when we are in pain or discomfort or tension, we cut off from that area. We just, if we've got this constant niggling chronic sore shoulder, for example, we'll just completely cut off from it. And what happens is it becomes even more tense. We hold it in tension, we cut off the blood, we cut off the oxygen, we don't breathe into the area. So what meditation's doing is actually undoing that and welcoming that part of the body back to the body, so our body's heads and minds become whole and part of our whole body again. So I after I've relaxed through the class, with say a body scan meditation, I encourage people to notice places of tension and revisit those areas, and actually just pay some attention and give it some love just simply by breathing. And you find that the more you just let go and release into the breath, the more that tension dissipates. And it is just practice. So, a few people have come to me quite a few times and said, my God, I did that, and that my lower back was agony when I started and it disappeared completely. Okay, so the most important thing in meditation is to be comfortable. Quite often, that's why I haven't got formal postures for meditation. I think it's really important to sit in your favorite chair, or lie down somewhere comfortable, or use the wall as a support when you're sitting, to make sure you're not distracted by pain, because as soon as you're distracted, you're not going to be able to meditate or do anything mindfully. Okay, hope that answers
It
the
does
question.
indeed. Thank you very much. And, it's with extreme honour and privilege to welcome you to the panel tonight with the other panellists. And we do know that you work with PETA UK at North Hampshire.
That's right, Russ. Thanks for inviting me as well.
No problem at all. Rochelle, if I can ask you the next question regarding how much you should drink in a day.
Fluid-wise.
Fluid-wise.
So generally speaking, the guideline would be about 1,500 to 2,000 mils. So kind of 8 to 10 cups or glasses. So that's about 200 mils per cup or glass. However, that's the kind of standard. And what I would say again is often fluid intake is based on body weight. So if I was seeing someone one-to-one, I'd be giving them sort of a tailored one, because also if you've got like a younger person with Parkinson's who's doing, serious levels of exercise, a lot of young people with Parkinson's are doing marathons and all sorts of things, well, then their requirement is going to be a lot higher, and really should be quite mindful around their fluid intake in the day. And I would say, for some people, certainly they should be at maybe 2 to 2.5 liters a day of water. And what I would often say to people is, when you take your levodopa, for example, if you're on Cinemeter in particular, you should take it with plenty of water to make sure that it's washed down into the gut, because a lot of people, they have problems with their swallowing, so the tablet gets stuck. So to make sure they wash it down. But also it can be dehydrating its own with levodopa. So if you take a pint of water, so that's roughly 500 mils. So say if you're taking Cinemet, which would be 3 times a day, well, that's 1,500 mils already. Your cups of teas and coffees are included in fluid. Your water is, your juices, not your fizzy drinks, because they really are not healthy for you. Not your alcohol, obviously, because your alcohol makes you dehydrated. And just on a point of, say, teas and coffees, people think that caffeine can dehydrate you. It won't if you're a habitual coffee drinker. So if you've always drunk coffee, it won't dehydrate you. But we kind of advise in terms of coffee, my 3 cups of instant coffee a day. In terms of tea, to about 6 cups of tea would reach your caffeine kind of requirement in the day. But be mindful, if you have a nice big, Starbucks or whatever brand you like, real kind of coffee, then that's one of those in the day would be your caffeine requirement. So, so certainly in terms of the fluid, again, hopefully that gives you sort of an insight in terms of what you need to do.
Thanks, Rochelle. And other forms of coffee, other manufacturers are available as well. Dr. Annette.
Brands. Off the top of my head.
Other brands, yeah. Dr. Annette, by exercising, when you said that that Charlotte and I do exercise, I presume you mean the space hoppers.
Yeah.
Question that's come in: what is your view on wearing gloves and these masks to protect us from COVID?
Okay, Russ. So for me, wearing a mask is really important. We know with COVID particularly, it's about the droplet effect, and actually wearing a mask will protect you from that. So there are some lovely slides that you can see of bacteria on kind of like petri dishes of people who haven't wear masks, and actually what can get through. So I think for me, masks are really important, because I worked on the wards very early on, looking after people with COVID. I've been wearing a mask out in the public, since really it all started off, because I wanted to not only protect myself, but I think about other people. I was mindful that I was working and looking after people who had the condition. If I was going out, I didn't want to, potentially pass it on to anybody else. So for me, I think masks are really important and should be worn. And I think the advice is, definitely that we should have those when we're out and about. And certainly here in the hospital, we have to wear them down the corridors. And if we can't keep our 2 meters apart in meetings, we have to wear the masks, and that's going through. I think for me, gloves are a slightly different issue. I'll wear them for medical reasons. So if I'm an individual person, I will be, And if I've got to examine somebody, then I'll obviously put a fresh pair of gloves on after washing my hands, and then I'll dispose of those gloves. My worrying part is I have seen people wear gloves thinking that actually it's a barrier, and I have seen people going to the supermarket, putting gloves on and not washing hands, and then touching all sorts of things. And actually all you're doing is then just picking up and passing it on from person to person. You're then often touching, your face, and I've seen, and other parts. So for me, gloves, shouldn't be worn unless there's a medical reason to do so. And for me, gloves should be worn for a procedure, for example, and then thrown away with hand washing before and afterwards. So I don't think that gloves, are a safe thing that people should be needing to do or should have to do. I think it's just good hand washing is far better, far more effective, and far safer for everybody. So keep the masks, but I would say ditch the gloves unless there's a medical procedure that you need to be undertaking.
Thank you. Thanks for your answer. I'd just like to run through again a call out to people watching or for the friends, just to say that it's a difficult time for us all. It's important to remember that the charities are struggling to continue to offer the levels of support and assistance we've all been accustomed to. Telephone helplines, these cost money to run. They've got to be staffed. There's the technical aspects. It costs money, and with reduced funds, along with an increase of people with Parkinson's relying on them, to assist with our anxiety and worries during this unprecedented situation. There's a number of cancelled fundraising events. Looking at the weather outside, I'm fortunate to have a beautiful blue sky today. These are the type of months where traditional fundraising events have been taking place, outdoor activities, marathon running, the Great North Run up in Newcastle. All of these have historically been a base where people raise money for charities. The number of local group meetings are all closed down for the time being, and that in itself has had a phenomenal impact on funding and sponsorship. So I therefore ask you kindly to remember that Parkinson'S UK seriously need your help. If you are able to, and if you can afford it, please donate to the charity. The link is in the description on the YouTube channel. And, please get your friends, your colleagues to do the same. Just remember that Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. So not only will you be fundraising to help Parkinson's UK, you'll also be funding research and the education programs about this terrible disease. Thank you. Gillian, if I can pick on you. Welcome, Gillian. Can you meditate outdoors?
Well, outdoors is a brilliant place to go actually to meditate. The odd person will come to me and say, there's no way I'm coming back to class because I can't just sit there or lie there and meditate. And then I introduce the idea of actually, do you ever go a walk? Because you can do that at the same time. You can be walking and just take a few minutes and a few breaths, or you can use a different anchor. We call them anchors. It might be the breath. It might be being aware of your five senses, your sight, your hearing, and just being aware of what you see and hear. And it's just really paying attention in a sort of mindful moment of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So you might be sitting outdoors and you might be watching the clouds across the sky. You might be watching the leaves rustle in the trees, not to use your name, Ross. So whatever you're doing, you can actually pay attention to what you're doing. And actually, it's easier if you've been to a meditation or a mindfulness class to get into this rhythm of paying more attention on a more regular basis to what you're doing. If you're at the beach, you can just watch the waves moving in and out from the shore. My favorite one is people watching, just sitting back and actually paying attention to everyone and everything around you. That's really mindful. You're paying attention to the present moment. You're not wandering off into thought necessarily. You're just right here in the present moment. And that's really what it's about. if that helps. Now, there are lots of distractions outdoors, so that's why I say it's sometimes better to attend a class either online or in person eventually, if we ever get back to that, to really learn the ropes and work out how to come back to this anchor every time you wander off, because we're just human. We're always distracted. We always wander off in thought or worry, or even just our shopping lists. We think, oh God, or think, why are we spending time doing this? We could be doing this and this. We're always doing that. So in meditation, all we're doing is practicing. As soon as we've realized we've been distracted, we come back to our anchor. Okay, so that could be, as I said, the breath, or in a particular meditation, it could be a body scan, or it could be, paying attention to nature outdoors, or how your body moves outdoors while you're walking, or walking the dog, or whatever you do outdoors. So I hope that helps.
It does indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm very, very pleased that you mentioned the people watching. As a person with Parkinson's, I find it quite easy when I'm sat outside a branded name coffee house to sit back, and with my partner Charlotte, we often see people walking past with the typical Parkinson's lean, or the hand in the pocket, or the robotic swing of the arm. And quite often we wonder, I wonder if they've got Parkinson's. I think from a perspective of having Parkinson's, it's quite easy to spot other people with it now. So
It's interesting.
there you go.
Parky spotting.
Sorry?
We call it parky spotting.
You'll offend a lot of people using that name, Rochelle, I tell you.
I know people don't like it. It's funny, it's different. But yeah, I totally identify with what you say. You definitely, it takes one to know one. But I could listen to Gillian's voice forever. It's so relaxing. I can feel myself relaxing the minute she talks.
There you go, Gillian.
Rochelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been described as chocolate, but I think chocolate's much better.
Lovely voice.
Not only is it fantastic to welcome you to the panel tonight, I'm also very pleased to learn that you do work with Parkinson's UK down in, where is it?
Basingstoke, North Hampshire. Yeah.
So they've got a fantastic mindfulness teacher down there, Parkinson's trained, and they can be found at mindful-medicine.co.uk.
Thank you.
Dr. Annette, a couple of questions that have come in. We've talked about the embarrassment of stools going across to the other side. Does Parkinson's cause bladder problems?
Hi, Russ. Yeah, this is something that I will ask on a regular basis about. Have you noticed any problems or changes to going to the toilet, having a wee? And for me, Russ, it's about getting a really good history to start off with. Lots of us, particularly women, we're very good at, rushing to the toilet thinking I'll have to go before I go out, and actually giving ourselves really bad habits in terms of our bladder. So that when we go out shopping and come back and put the key in the door, it's like, I need to go here and now. So we do have that, but it's understanding what the problems are, Russ, so people can have what we call urgency. So that means when you feel the need to go to the toilet, you've got to go. You can't hold on. You cannot hold the urine in. You've got to, if you don't go, you'll wet yourself. You can have frequency. So that means you're going an awful lot, and that's me more often than you'd expect. We can have also problems of a night time where you're frequently up and down through the night time needing to go to the toilet. And yes, we can have incontinence and dribbling incontinence, and all sorts of things as well, and pain on going to the toilet. So for me, it's a really careful history and understanding about what the problems are. And we know with Parkinson's, again, sometimes it can actually be because your walking's not great. You might be off at a certain point in the day, and actually when you get the urge to go to the toilet, you're just not good enough or quick enough to get there. Sometimes clothing, we know, can be tricky with buttons and zips, and it could even be fasteners that we've got the issue to do that. Or it can even be getting, the toilet itself, trying to get in and off, on and off the toilet. So we know that the bladder is a muscle, and obviously it's designed to fill up really nicely with urine to get to a certain point and be full, and that then triggers off the brain to then release, and it gives you that signal that you need to go to the toilet. And I think lots of us are really bad at not drinking enough. So we talked about fluids before being really important for the bowel. They're also really important for the bladder. So if you're not drinking enough, what happens is the urine becomes very concentrated, and that really irritates your bladder, and it doesn't like that at all. And what happens is it's trying to get rid of that. So that makes you want to go more often and go more frequently. So actually we're saying to you, when you go to the toilet, have a look at the colour of your urine, and it should be the colour of a nice pale white wine. If it's darker than that, then it's potentially that you're a bit dehydrated, you need to drink a bit more. And I know, though, sometimes that's difficult with Parkinson's medication because it can change the colour of your urine and can discolour it, so it's not easy to look at. But actually it's about being aware of what it would normally look like, and kind of keeping a check on that and keeping an eye on the colour of that. So yes, it can cause problems. Parkinson's can cause problems with the bladder, but there are multiple problems it can cause. And it's just trying to understand and unpick that a little bit more with a careful assessment. So again, the first part of call would be hopefully a Parkinson's nurse. Hopefully we would ask you about it. But certainly, if you've got problems, then contact them and we can talk through that. We can do an assessment. There are things, again, we can signpost you to, that we can do simple hints and tips about. We can talk about fluid intake or diet or clothing, all those things, some self-help measures. But then if we think there's some, further serious problems, then we might want to refer you through to our colleagues in continence services to do bladder scanning, to have a look at how much urine you're retaining or how much you're passing when you go to the toilet, or have a look at the other strategies in terms of even bladder retraining, so that if you get that urgency feeling, about learning how to hold on to that for a bit longer, and be able to count through that, so that actually you're not going to have problems or incontinent episodes. So for me, if you start to develop problems, talk about it early. Again, it's one of those things, if you leave it, it just gets worse, and it becomes more difficult then to sort it out later on down the line. So if you start to have problems, please go and see somebody. And again, Parkinson's UK got some really nice information regarding your bowels and bladder. And in there, some really helpful, self-help stuff, self-management things you can actually look at to start off with. But if those problems persist, please go and see, your specialist who can talk through it with you a bit more detail, understand what concerns you've got, and hopefully have a plan to kind of manage those, and stop it from being a problem anymore for you.
Thank you. Very good answer. And just to add a bit of personal, when I was working, I was awarded a contract down in Slough, and with you mentioning the colours of your urine, there was a health and safety officer sat at the entrance to the porta cabins, which contained the gents' urinals, and above the urinal was a laminated picture from dark to light, and each change had a number beside it. And on the way out to the toilet, he asked what number you were, and you had to tell him what kind of grade you were at. If it was out of the spectrum, then they asked you to remove yourself from the working site for a while. Health and safety. There you go. Right, we've had a question in. Rochelle, if I may, which foods should you avoid eating with Parkinson's?
So
there's a long list.
Long list. Well, I mean, to start with, if we go back to the sort of food-based guidelines, usually say at top of a pyramid or on the plate. So basically, your what we call your top shelf foods. So your high sugar foods are the ones that you want to, your snack foods. Those are things that you want to sort of avoid in general, whether you have Parkinson's or not. But certainly in terms of people with Parkinson's, sometimes they can have problems with insulin resistance, so they don't metabolize the sugars in food as well. So, loading the body with sort of refined sugars is not a good idea. Again, I would say in terms of on that refined carbohydrates, so avoiding, your white breads, your white pastas, those kind of things, going for the healthier whole grain type. Now, again, just to say, it depends on it from an individual basis point of view. Sometimes people, too much fiber can be a bad thing, but in the main, we want to go for the whole grain diet. So avoiding the refined carbohydrates would be something I would say. Alcohol, obviously, from a point of view, is not great for Parkinson's. Obviously, from the point of view of dehydration, and I don't want to be a killjoy in terms of having the odd glass of wine. Obviously, just be mindful that certain medications it can sort of interact with, so you need to be mindful around that, and obviously it can dehydrate you. In terms of protein is really important, for our body in terms of keeping our muscles strong, important for our iron levels, important in terms of keeping fatigue at bay. A lot of people with Parkinson's, suffer because obviously the majority of people with Parkinson's are in the older group and can suffer from a thing called sarcopenia, where the muscle kind of wastes. So you need to get enough protein in the diet. But from foods you should cut out, I suppose, just want to say that for some people, if they eat a meal that has a lot of protein in it, it can sometimes interact with the levodopa that they're trying to absorb. So basically, levodopa and protein compete for the same absorption site in the gut. So what I would say is, it doesn't happen for everybody, but it's, again, using a food diary, you can notice over a few days, when you have a big steak for your dinner, do you notice that your symptoms are worse? Or when you go for a lighter meal that doesn't have as much protein in it, is it not, your symptoms not as bad? Also, in terms of, I suppose, for people, it's spreading the protein across the day can help in terms of their symptoms as well. In terms of, any other sort of bad foods, it's really more, as say, the sugary top shelf foods that would be the concern. People kind of worry about things like dairy, and talk about dairy being bad for Parkinson's. The evidence is not there that dairy is bad for Parkinson's. In fact, dairy can give you a lot of benefits in terms of your bone health, because again, people with Parkinson's can have a higher level of osteopenia and osteoporosis. And dairy, gives us calcium. Now, if you don't like dairy, you don't want to take dairy, you can get other calcium sources. Again, that's something you really should discuss. You should make sure you get a DEXA scan to check your bone health, really important for anyone with Parkinson's. And if you've osteopenia or osteoporosis, you might need to be on a calcium supplement that would cover your dairy needs as such. And what I would say about the dairy is, there is some research that has maybe shown that there might be a link, but I think the jury is out at the moment. So what we're only asking people to have is 3 servings of dairy a day, and that's only like a glass of milk, a yogurt, a matchbox size of cheese. So that's absolutely fine. It's when people are taking lashings of dairy that can be the the problem areas. So just kind of, because that's kind of a message that can be out there that can be confusing to people. So just make sure you're getting your calcium and your vitamin D, obviously, is very important. And actually, just on the back of talking about COVID, people, in general, need to make sure they're getting adequate vitamin D, especially coming now into the winter months. But people with Parkinson's, in particular, should be making sure that they're getting adequate vitamin D. So the guidelines are 10 micrograms of vitamin D a day. Generally, we get it from the sunshine, but if you're, isolating, which a lot of the older people with Parkinson's might be doing, then they may need to be taking a vitamin D supplement. So again, there'll be advice on, I'm sure, the Parkinson's UK website about that. It'll be on the NHS website, it's on the HSE website here in Ireland. So, getting your vitamin D is really important, especially coming into the winter months.
Thank you. Thank you. We are coming up to the top of the hour, so I'd just like to, once again, if you bear with me, and just put a couple of requests out. One is for the research study, which includes a survey questionnaire aimed at understanding the scope and value of Parkinson's nursing. There's 2 sets of questions, one for people with Parkinson's, and the other is for the carers of people with Parkinson's. And just so I cover all topics, carers, family members, people who look after, spouses, anyone who has a connection to somebody with Parkinson's. That is, if you live in the UK, please fill these in. The survey results, as we've discussed tonight, will be very important to our colleagues like Richelle, who's also said that she'd like a copy of them. And the other one is a call for donations for Parkinson's UK. Remember, this is prime time, normally before COVID struck, where outdoor activities and fundraising events would have normally taken place. It's had a phenomenal impact on the funding and sponsorship as we've been in lockdown, where many of these events and local branches have closed, cancelled, and not being able to take part. So again, I kindly ask you to go to the description in the YouTube for this session and make a donation, spread the word, and get your friends, colleagues, family to do the same. So, like I say, we've just reached the 8 o'clock mark. I'd very much like to thank Dr. Annette, our technical guy who's hidden behind the scenes. I'd like to thank Richelle for accepting the invitation to come to the panel tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. And Jillian Ward from mindfulmedicine.co.uk. Thank you very much for your involvement tonight.
Thanks, Russ.
Last but not least, Catherine Crawford from Parkinson'S UK, who's the Director of Services. Without your help and support, these sessions wouldn't have been taking place. So I would like to thank you. You're on mute, but
yeah, thanks are all yours, I think, Russ. And I think these are really valuable. Delighted we're doing and looking forward to the next one.
Fantastic. The next one is also going to be called Life After Lockdown. Get me teeth in. Life After Lockdown, Part 2, where we'll be discussing workplace and well-being, which is an important topic as a lot of us going back to work or being asked to go back to the workplace, you know, the anxiety that may present to people can be quite overwhelming. So as yet, we haven't got a date for that, but watch this space and we'll analyze it accordingly. So without anything else, thank you all.
Thank you.